The lights dimmed, and the chatter of the audience faded into a nervous silence. A small boy in tattered shoes stood alone in the center of the massive stage, clutching the microphone with trembling hands. He couldn't have been more than 12, but his eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen far too much of life too soon. The judges exchanged uncertain glances. Nobody expected much from the shy boy who had introduced himself simply as Eli. Yet, when the music started, something unforgettable happened. Eli's voice rose, soft at first, almost fragile, but within seconds, the first few notes of "We Are the World" filled the room with a power that didn't match his small frame. His voice trembled, not from fear, but from emotion that came straight from the soul. The audience sat frozen. The judges leaned forward. Every word he sang carried a story, and though no one knew it yet, that story was one of pain, loss, and impossible hope. Eli had grown up in a rundown shelter on the edge of town. His mother had passed away when he was 8, and his father had disappeared long before that. The only thing she left him was a small cassette player and an old recording of her singing "We Are the World." It was her favorite song, and she used to tell him, "Someday, Eli, you'll sing it too, not just to survive, but to remind people that even the smallest voices matter." Every night, he'd play that tape until it wore thin, holding onto her voice like it was the only thing keeping him alive. When the shelter school announced auditions for a national talent show, Eli hesitated. He didn't have clothes fit for the stage, he didn't have anyone to cheer him on, and he certainly didn't believe he belonged on television. But his teacher, Miss Ramirez, saw something special in him. She had heard him humming while sweeping the halls one evening, and the sound stopped her cold. She urged him to audition, saying, "The world needs to hear that voice, Eli. Not for fame, but for faith." On the day of the audition, Eli almost turned back. His heart raced as he saw the cameras, the bright lights, and the audience whispering about the boy with the torn shirt. He thought about leaving, but then he remembered his mother's voice, the warmth in it, the strength she found in the same song. So he stepped forward. As he sang the first chorus, a hush swept across the theater. His voice soared, carrying every ounce of pain and hope he had ever felt. By the time he reached the line, "We're saving our own lives," tears streamed down the faces of people who had come expecting just another performance. One of the judges pressed a hand over her mouth, eyes glistening. The cameramen forgot to move their lenses. It was as if time had stopped to listen. When the final note faded, the room stayed silent for a few seconds, then erupted in applause so loud it shook the walls. Eli stood there, stunned, as people rose to their feet. The judges rushed to him, one hitting the golden buzzer, showering the stage in gold confetti. Eli's eyes widened, his lips trembling as he whispered, "For you, Mom." The audience watched, crying and clapping, as this small boy from nowhere became the embodiment of hope. But the road after that day wasn't easy. Fame came quickly, but with it came pressure. Eli struggled to balance interviews, rehearsals, and the sudden attention. Reporters wanted his story, sponsors wanted his image. He missed the quiet corners of the shelter, where singing was just a dream and not a responsibility. There were days he felt lost again, even in success. Miss Ramirez reminded him gently, "The world is listening, but never forget why you started singing. You sing to heal, Eli, not to be seen." Months later, Eli stood on a grand stage for the finale, broadcast to millions around the world. As the lights dimmed again, he held that same old cassette player in his hand. He whispered a thank you to his mother and to everyone who believed when no one else did. When the opening chords of "We Are the World" began once more, his voice carried with even greater strength and purpose. This time, he wasn't just singing his mother's song, he was singing for every child who had ever been forgotten, for every dream that had almost died in silence. By the end, the world was watching, not just a boy singing, but a symbol of resilience. He didn't just win the competition that night, he won hearts. His story spread across the internet, reaching millions of people who saw in him a reminder that greatness doesn't come from comfort, but from courage born in hardship. Years later, Eli used his fame to build music programs for shelters across the country. "If music saved me," he often said, "it can save someone else too." And it did. Children who once thought they were invisible found their voices because of him. The boy who once sang to remember his mother became the boy who sang to heal the world, just as she always knew he would. And every time he performed "We Are the World," he'd close his eyes, feeling her presence beside him, smiling through the melody that started it all.